Okay, welcome to the Whimsy and Wellness podcast, Lesley.
I am so excited. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yes. So I have to tell you, as we were mapping out like who we wanted on the podcast and what types of topics we were going to cover, we knew right off the bat that we were like, okay, we need a mom with school-aged kids for this year or 2020 that, would also be working and would just kind of know the struggle of school-aged mamas this year, but working moms, and then also someone who would be like honest with us that like, yeah, that was quite the doozy. And you came to mind like right away. We were like, we have to have
Yes,
Lesley. She will
that's
be real.
awesome. That's awesome. I can't think of anything that would make me happier than someone thinking of me for like real talk. So I'm here
Yes.
for it. Let's do it.
Yes. So 2020, how's it been?
You know, in a lot of ways, it's been horrible. I think for me, as someone that takes on other people's emotions and, you know, uh, really let things get to me, I think the emotional toll of the suffering has been really heavy. And just knowing that so many people are struggling, we are so fortunate that, our jobs continued on and, we had hiccups with behind the scenes issues with shipping and all sorts of things, just like everybody else. But really, we were fine. But just knowing that so many people that we love were having a hard time was the worst. But in a lot of ways, 2020 has been such a gift or was such a gift because I have kids that are now 12 and 8, and they were gone all day long, and I miss them terribly. And I never thought they would go to school together because of their age difference. They were in two separate schools. And to have them home all day long and doing school together is just kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
So we've actually loved homeschooling way more than we thought that we would. And we did a ton of travel. We got an Airstream, which we never would have done. So there were a lot of gifts to the year, just a mixed bag of tricks, really.
Yes. That is a word, a mixed bag of tricks. I love that so much.
Woo!
It's such a like, yeah, a double-edged sword. Like there's so much good and so much bad. I had a baby in April, so
A
right at the
COVID
peak.
baby.
Yes,
Yes.
COVID baby. And at first I was so bummed, like no one will be able to visit and all of that. And honestly, I mean, he was my first baby, so I don't know any different. But I think if I were to have another baby in the hospital, I don't think I would let visitors come. It was amazing to just like be in a bubble and
Girl,
not have people visit.
as someone who was absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of visitors, I have to say you are correct. And also,
Yeah.
congrats. That's so
Thank you.
exciting. Yeah, they're
Thanks.
like little secret babies. I feel like all the pregnancies, all the babies this year, they've been these sort of protected little creatures that you just get to have all to yourself, which is really special too.
Yes, it's so and when
So
we go out in public, rarely, he just stares at other people like,
it's like,
"Who?
what in the world?
There's other humans? Like, what? What
So
are you?"
strange. How
So
crazy, right?
so weird. But yeah, there's the heartache of it, but also like what a gift. So I
Yes, it's the
echo.
gift of time. Yes.
Yes, yes, for sure. So let's talk first about like working from home while your kids are home, which you've like kind of done because you've run your Young Living business from home for a while, right?
6 years. So yes.
Yeah. So how has what's been different from pre-COVID working from home to like COVID and your kids are home? What's been different?
Oh my gosh, everything. I mean, when I started my business, I had an 18-month-old and I think Matilda was almost 5. So I went from having 2 kids home to 1 child in school all day to both girls in school all day and now both girls home all day.
Oh,
Honestly, this has been my favorite season, and I'm in a different place in my business. When my girls were really young, I was working my tush off. And now we're
mhm.
in a place where the hard work has kind of paid off and we're able to kind of enjoy our kids being at home. So it's really a gift.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys decided to homeschool, right, for the
Mhm.
2021 school year, which
Yes.
is no small feat deciding that. So can you talk to us about like the process of making that decision and coming to that decision and like how it's impacted your day to day?
Oh, absolutely. So my husband actually decided to leave his corporate job a year before 2020 hit.
Mm,
And, he decided to pursue leatherworking full time, which is something that he's been doing for 10 years on the side. And that was super exciting, but it was also just a huge adjustment. So we had this sort of like weird year of figuring out what that looked like.
yeah.
And then COVID hit and the girls came home, and I knew like deep in my gut that they were not going back to school earlier this year. And I just had that feeling. And we just sort of decided if they did come back with some weird stuff that the girls were going to have to do, not weird, but you know what I mean? Like if they were going to have to
Mhm,
wear masks all day or any of the stuff that we just felt like if we could avoid it, we would try. And I realized not
mhm,
everyone has that luxury because it really, was a
mhm,
luxury. But we just said, this is something we've tossed the idea around. Why not just give it kind of have a gap year of just doing our own thing? And it was a big decision because my husband was really going to be the one doing most of the teaching.
mm.
I am lunch lady and art and mom, basically. So, and there are interruptions all day long. So it's not like it's like this confined, tidy
Yeah.
situation. We're really winging it, but we found a curriculum that we loved. And Sam is an amazing, like, he actually thinks that he maybe would have gone to school for teaching, and he has just like rocked it. So it's just been really cool to watch him step into that role too.
That's awesome. So, did you face like internal fears or insecurities in that? Because I felt like even like I don't have a school age kid, but I just even on social media, I felt like watching everything, there was like no right decision. Like everyone had an opinion about what everyone should be doing with schools, and parents were being attacked in schools and teachers. And it just was like, I can't imagine the internal fears and insecurities that I'm sure so many parents were feeling. So, like, did you struggle with that? And how did you, make peace with your decision if you did?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we decided pretty early on that we were going to homeschool and felt really good about it. I would say that a lot of my friends and the conversations that I had were riddled with anxiety and like, what are we doing? And I just felt like for us personally, we had no interest in riding that roller coaster, and we really did not like virtual learning at all.
Mhm.
And so we had a feeling that the kids were going to end up coming back home, which they haven't yet so far. But I have a feeling maybe, I don't know. So
Right.
we just felt like we're just not going to ride the roller coaster, but it was hard. And I think it is hard. But I had several of my friends who could have homeschooled tell me later on, they were like, we should have just done it.
Mhm.
So, but I think everyone's doing the best that they can with the information that we had. And it was
Yeah.
constantly changing, and it still is. So
Right.
it's like, there's no right way to do this by any
Yeah.
means.
Yeah, there really is. So you mentioned curriculum briefly, and I've heard that that can be like such an overwhelming task to like choose because there's so many options and opinions. And so what resources did you use to put together, a school plan and curriculum, and did you follow a certain method?
Well, I did what anyone would do in the year of 2020, where I polled people on Facebook and Instagram, right?
Of course.
Um, and so you do start to see these sort of repeating ideas that, a lot of people that are like-minded are doing the same kind of things. And, I have friends who are very like type one on the Enneagram organized who were like piecing it all together. I was like, no, like I need like, where do I sign for a everything comes and let's do that. So we ended up doing the good and the beautiful, which I love. And they didn't have a math option for Matilda because she's in sixth grade. So we
Mhm.
outsourced that through Master Books, I think is what it's called. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure that's it. And yeah, so we do, it's all
Oh,
cohesive. And so that's
that's
been really nice,
nice.
super simple.
Yeah. So now that you're halfway through the year, which
Yeah,
is insane,
it really
insane.
is.
Congrats.
Thank you. I think we all need an award at this point, right?
Right? Oh my gosh, I know. My mom is a public school first grade teacher and they're still in school. And I'm just like, I don't know how you do that, you
They're
know?
heroes.
She's
Truly.
like, one of my first graders lost a tooth under his mask the other day, and neither of us knew what to do.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
I was
That is
like, yeah,
crazy.
what do you do?
You're a sweet mom. These teachers, they deserve everything. I'm like, whatever you can give them,
I
we all need to
know.
give them whatever.
I know
So much to
teachers and
navigate.
yeah, like teachers and parents and these kids that are so resilient,
Oh, they're so
so resilient.
resilient.
Oh my gosh. So, would you do anything differently, like knowing what you know now that you're halfway through the year?
Um, I feel like what I would do differently is not stress as much about making the decision because we did stress. And also, I think that I would just be confident in staying in my lane.
Mhm.
It's so easy to look to what everyone else is doing and to second guess everything because I did, because we're big believers in public school, and we were like, who are we to educate our children? I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But I had so many people that reaffirmed that we were capable. And I'm grateful for the people that took
Yeah.
the time to like encourage us.
Yeah. No, that's so.
Okay. 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 Bye bye. Sam went to the orthodontist and
Ah,
didn't take Phoebe. So, all right. Sorry.
okay. Cut. No, this is the perk of this, right?
So sorry. She was staring
No,
at
you're
me for
good.
like 10 minutes. I was like, okay.
No, she was perfect. Haley's stepson did that in our first interview, and she was like, "Leave it to my kid to interrupt."
All right. Thank you, Haley. All right.
So she went first. She went first.
It's awesome.
But he came in behind her and he was so quiet that she didn't see him. So I was kind of just like interrupt. I'm like, you have a visitor.
So you
It's
could see
like,
him. That's hilarious.
yeah. And he's just like behind her, like
That's
creeping
what she was doing too. Shut the door. Yes,
in.
they're on the right foot. I love you. Okay.
It's so cute. Okay. No, that was perfect timing because we were like at the end.
Oh,
Let's
sorry.
see. Okay, so given that like you own your own business and your husband does too, right?
Yes,
Is it Magnolia Leatherworks? Is that?
it is. You're
Yes.
so sweet to know that.
Yes, they
Yes.
are incredible, or he is incredible. We just did Whimsy Wellness just did like a collaboration with him. He does great work, you guys. So check him out. But you guys both own your own businesses. So how did you
Mhm.
guys like divide up homeschool and just regular parenting? I mean, I know you said Sam took the lead, but
Yes.
how was that with like both running your businesses too?
It's been crazy, fortunately for Sam, he really determines his own schedule, production level, like everything is so he really is his own boss where I have obligations and responsibilities to people and have to
Mhm.
be available to other people where he doesn't. So it really was just a natural fit for him to do school. He's also a night owl, so he does most of his leather work after I go to bed, which is very
Mm,
early. I'm like a
yes.
total grandma. It worked out really well that way. He's also, like I said, just amazing at teaching and explaining things. And that's not really my gifting.
Right. So you mentioned the Enneagram before. So
Yes.
tell me your number and Sam's number if you know his.
Okay. Oh yeah. I feel like it's like such a pivotal part of our marriage, like figuring that out about him. It was like, oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
So he's a one wing two. So he has a strong two wing, very much a helper, super perfectionistic, and all that stuff. And so,
Hmm.
and then I'm a three wing four, which I
Okay.
find to be, they're almost opposites, It's like, be who people want you to be, but I can't because I have to stay true to myself. So it's like
Yes.
constantly battling the mind. What about you?
Yes. I'm a 6 with my 7 wing is so strong. So I had a hard time. Like,
No fun.
I was so split. Like, am I a 6 or a 7? But then I think I just like wanted to be more of a 7. Like, I'm like, but that's more
But let's
fun.
be real. I know.
Yeah. But I'm also terrified of dying like every moment. So probably,
You're
probably
like,
a 6.
I love that. Well, I'm supposed to go to six and help. So I'll just try to be you. That's my new
Yes.
goal.
Yes. I go to 3 in stress, which I do. I wish I went to 3 in growth sometimes. I'm like, you guys have some great strengths.
Sometimes.
Okay, so let's talk about like the guilt and the shame that can come with being a working mom. How can people like just kick that right to the curb?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only natural. I struggle with that big time because I'm like, I should be teaching the girls, and here I am working, or, it's like you could always beat yourself up for something. It's
Mhm.
never simple.
Mhm.
But what I would say is that how I've worked through that is trying. And again, there's no perfect way to do any of this stuff because it's just hard, honestly. But
Mhm.
to have boundaries, especially with technology. When I'm with the girls, I want to be with them 100%. And so
Mhm.
that's just setting boundaries for me. Like with dinner on, my phone is, I don't know where it is because I don't have a lot of self control when it comes to work because I do love it so much. I've gotten better. I definitely feel like I've grown in that area, but I do still feel that temptation to like look at my phone, see what's going on, blah, blah. So
Right.
just hiding that when I'm with them and making sure that I'm filling up their cup and tucking them in at night, because you can tell when your kids are needy. There's like, it's real special. They start with the whining and then they're trying to get your attention. And so I can tell
Yeah.
when my kids feel loved. And so that's my goal is for them to go to sleep and me to know that I can tell that they feel seen and loved. And, you
Yeah,
know,
that's so important. And like I keep reminding myself like letting them watch us work is such a gift cuz I too will feel so guilty like Acre's only 7 months old, but I'm still just always like, oh, screen time is so bad. And he sees me on my phone and I have Elmo playing. But it's like he gets to
girl.
watch me work and screen time is fine, especially in 2020.
Oh my gosh, it is
And
totally fine. And I remember that feeling when the girls were babies. Like if I wasn't looking at them at all moments of the day, that I must be doing something wrong. And my friend
yeah,
was like, you don't have to look at her all day. And I was like, are you sure? I think we just come out thinking we're going to screw them up. And honestly, we probably will in some way. And that's okay too. It's all part of the
yes,
human experience. But I
yes,
think you're right. I do think that it's so important for our girls, for your son to see us chasing some dream, and to not shrink back and to not put all of our goals to the side just because we're quote moms.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about actually, I would love to talk about, as you say, life is a sounding board. Can you like elaborate on that?
So my mentor and one of my dear friends, Courtney Kreitz, she shared this analogy with us years ago, and it was the first thing that ever made sense to me as far as working as a mom. And really, balance is a mess. I totally believe that. But if you look at our lives like a sounding board, when you're in a recording studio, you're trying to pump up the bass or turn down the whatever, I don't know all these technical terms. I'm not a musician, but you're not trying to make everything sound the same. And so sometimes we have to turn up the work volume. Sometimes we have to, dial it down, when you know that you need to be more present for your family, or God forbid, there's some, sort of issue going on or whatever that you need to be present for that. But it's just constantly moving things around to make it all work. But it's never having everything at the same volume, which I think we
Yeah.
think we need to be like super present here and super present here. Well, we're just one, frail
Yes.
human. So
Oh, that is so good. I love that.
I thought it
So,
was too. And so I try to keep that in mind. And we can't have the same buttons always up. It's like if work
right.
is always the primary noise, then everything else is going to be affected.
Right. And I feel like balance, I mean, maybe I'm saying this because I'm a woman, but I feel like as a woman and a mom, I feel like that's something I always hear my friends saying, like, I just want to find balance, or I wonder how she balances it. And it's like, she don't.
She don't. And that is the God honest truth.
Yeah.
There is no one I know that is doing everything well. You just
Mm,
can't.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about helping our kids through all of this because there was some intense energy. I feel like
Oh my
that
gosh.
there is no word to like explain it. So I'll just say intense energy for 2020,
Yeah.
but it was like next level. we were all just feeling like collective grief and anger and fear and conversations that were long overdue. And like with your kids, who remind me their ages again?
So Matilda is 12 and Phoebe is 8.
Yeah, so they're like not oblivious. So how have
No.
you like navigated like some of these conversations?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they've heard us talk about so much of it just because anytime we'd be with other adults, which isn't very often these days,
Mhm.
politics would come up, racial tension would come up. They got to hear a lot of those conversations with it, which I think is great. They heard us sort of processing through. We don't have all the answers, and
Mhm.
I think more than anything, what I've tried to pass on to them is just to be curious and to ask questions and to realize that they don't and they never will know everything. And I think it's so
Mhm.
important that we listen to other people's perspectives, especially people that don't have the same opportunities or background or whatever, like we've got to be
Yeah.
willing to listen. And I think part of the tension came from people being unwilling
Yes.
to
Yeah,
listen.
it's so unsafe to be so like closed off. So yeah,
Oh
being
my
getting
gosh.
curious is so good. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so with kids being like such sponges and like you said, they heard a lot of the conversations, how are your kids doing with the isolation or even like you said in the beginning with you taking on the emotional baggage of the world? Like how have they handled that? And what do you think like as moms, how can we help them through it?
Yeah, I think you nailed the head. What do you say? Nailed it on the head. Hit the nail on the head. There we
Oh,
go.
there we
Living
go.
it. Woo! It's hard to talk. With kids being super resilient, I think this year has been incredibly confusing, would be the word.
Mhm.
And so my kids, I would say on a daily basis, are super positive and just have an amazing outlook. But then we'll have days where out of nowhere there's tears and it all kind of comes
Mhm.
out. And I'm like, that's how I feel too. It's like they
Yeah.
just try to put on a brave face every day and then they really miss their school friends, or they'll feel sad that something got canceled or a family member couldn't come visit because of COVID or whatever. And it sucks, but I'm so grateful that they know that they can express that and that they see us. I think Sam and I have both had moments of emotions, big emotions this past year. And so they've seen that we have those moments and then we rally and we get back on the horse and we keep going. And so I really think that honestly, kids are getting to learn a lot of lessons that sometimes you don't learn until later in life, that
Yeah.
not everything works out with a bow on it and there are disappointments and we get to choose how we react.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so with being home like all the time,
All the time.
I'm like
Mhm.
clawing at the door.
No.
Like, do you want to go get coffee? Does anyone want to go on a drive?
Anyone, especially if you got that 7 wing. Woo! You're like,
Yeah,
get me
I'm
out of
just like,
here.
people. The other day, I literally cried because Acre hasn't seen like a stranger's smile, and it just like made me sad.
Hate it.
It's just so like some days, like you said, some days it's like I'm so positive, and then other days I'm like, I just want to like smile at a stranger and not wonder like, are my eyes like
I know.
vibrant enough for them to know I'm smiling? It's
It is
like,
so bizarre.
yeah, it's so weird. So, with being home all the time and not being able to get childcare really, how have you been able to create boundaries at home to have like time with Sam? Or does that just not really exist?
So we're really in a kind of cool season with parenting. They're not babies, you know, and so
Mhm.
they can watch a TV show or something. We can have some time. We've had some nights where we're like, we're not doing tuck in tonight. We're having a date night. You guys can tuck yourselves in. We love you so much. Give us a hug. And then they put themselves to bed and we have kind of a date night. And that is like basically like us being exhausted and watching The Vow, or we just did The
Yeah.
Undoing, which was really good. So good. Highly recommend. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just pockets of alone time. And sometimes we've been so fortunate that we have great neighbors. And so the girls will go play outside and we have some time then, but it's been hard. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of alone time at all.
Yeah, it is. It's rough. You got to really get creative.
Woo! All right. Yep.
Okay, so I'd love, if it's okay with you, if I could read like part of a caption from one of your Instagram posts, because you shared it in the spring and at the time it was like so good. And I think it would like resonate with people now. Do you mind if I read it?
No, I'm so curious.
What is it?
Yeah, what is this?
Okay, so you said emotions are high, people are spread thin. It seems like there isn't a safe place to just say, man, I'm struggling with this. People either act like nothing is happening and everything is fine, or they have pitchforks for one camp or another. Fear is so divisive, and so are the opinions. So hard to even know what to believe or trust. That like makes me want to cry just reading it. It is so true. I feel like I could have written that. I'm sure people listening feel like they could have written it. And it's like, my unfiltered self wants to say, like, if we're all thinking that, then like, why is it like that? You know?
I know, gosh. And I think when you mix in social media, which is already a whole can of worms, where people are really selling themselves every day.
Mm-hmm.
But then you mix in that human element, it's very confusing because
Yeah.
you're like, I have to, pay the bills. So I have to show up here. But
Right.
also, I really want to acknowledge the fact that things are crazy right now, and I'm still wrestling with it. It feels so, my forewing comes out where it's like, this is so phony baloney to like show up and just do Christmas home tours right now when
Mm-hmm.
there are people that don't have power in their house because they can't afford it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a constant tension of how do I do this well? And I don't, like we said about everything else, I don't know that there is a right way to do it well. But yeah, it's tough. And in some ways, I think it's gotten easier to handle the chaos, or maybe I've just tuned out enough to where I feel like things aren't as intense, but it's definitely still there.
Yeah. It's so real and lonely. And yeah, that
Lonely.
comparison is so good. Yesterday, someone on Instagram stories, I don't even remember the account, but they did like a scan of their room without an Instagram filter. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that looks like a real house. That looks like my house. And it's so, I don't know, I hadn't even thought of it, but like we haven't seen unfiltered homes and that kind of thing. It's just, it is hard to not compare.
Oh my gosh, my house looks like a bomb went off on a daily basis. I'm like, when no one ever leaves the house. I mean, literally, we have these sweet two ladies that come and help us clean the house a couple of times a month. And by Tuesday, we were talking about houses being disasters.
Okay, so I think we did. Okay. All right. So then what are some ways with, with all of that craziness and that post that I read from you, it's just like, it's so spot on. And so like, I would just love to know, like, what are some ways you've stayed grounded in a time that it's really hard to stay grounded with so much negativity and fear and grief and hate?
You were so sweet, first of all. I haven't done it perfectly. I've had a couple of outbursts where I instantly regretted it. I think it's freedom of speech is a gift and a curse because you can say whatever you want, but I always try to say things that I'm going to be okay with it being out there. And usually I do a pretty decent job, I think, of like keeping things through that lens. But I had a few moments where I was like, dang it, this is just too much. Like, I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of seeing the signs in people's yards. I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of this, sick of that. And, I had a couple of people reach out and say, that's very privileged to say that. And I was like, I'm sure, and it's like, I didn't really think about what I was saying or how that could sound or anything like that. I just kind of had this like boiling over of just like, this is too much, but I've learned so much this year about how much I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I think that trying to have a spirit of humility, being willing to listen to people has kept me grounded, because I think if you want to be a dog in the fight, you've got to really have some thick skin. And honestly, I don't want to argue with people on the internet. I don't want to argue with strangers. You're tone deaf if you don't talk about what's going on, but you can get in big trouble if you do. And so
Yeah.
it's some tricky business. And I think I just landed in loving people and not really getting involved in anything that could be controversial, because that's never been what I've used my platform for. I don't even have a big platform, but I'm like, why would I get involved with that now? I don't need to be the news or anything like that. So for me, for staying grounded, it's being with my family more than I'm being online. Definitely trying to cut back on social media altogether, and just setting up boundaries to make sure that like I'm filling myself up with something that nourishes my soul before I go online. I'm not great at that either, honestly. And I think, being a curious person, I want to know what's going on. I want to know what people are saying. I want to get into those comment threads and see the back and forth. I think it's human nature to watch the train wreck, you know? But I have found that is very unhealthy for me, and a big time suck. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's bedtime. What did I do today? Oh, I read Donald Trump's Twitter for 16 hours or whatever, you know?
Yeah. No, and knowing, like, I think knowing our own triggers is so important, but it's so hard because, like, you get FOMO or you're accused of being uninformed. Like, my thing is like the news, like, it just makes me so sad and anxious. But then I just wrestle with like, oh, well, then I'm uninformed and not paying attention. But it's like, there has to be a limit. I mean, we know what's going on. And
honestly,
like, knowing
what is being informed doing for us at this point? Or over-informed. I think there's a difference.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, knowing, I think for sure, like figuring out what triggers you, knowing that you can like turn off the news, unfollow that person or mute them. Because even though you love reading it, you're left like so mad for 2 hours afterwards. And like, can you believe what she posted?
And for me too, I muted people that I love, you know, like I don't want to look at you different, and I don't like the stuff that you're sharing. It does not resonate with me, and I don't think it's good. And I don't want to look at people differently during a time where people are really the worst versions of themselves. You know, I truly think that this year has brought all of our junk to the surface, and I don't want to judge people. And so for me, I'm like, I want to protect our relationship. And if muting you is how I do that, then here we are, even if it's just temporary or whatever.
Yes. I'm forever grateful for learning about the mute button. So nice. So nice. Okay. So one of the things I like love about you, I mean, I feel like I'm talking about you like we're friends in real life. Like this is what I love about you. But following you online, what I love about you is like how honestly you share like vulnerabilities, and you've opened up a ton online about mental health and what you do to take care of your mental health. And like, that is so huge, because even for me, for so long, I was like, so embarrassed to be like, oh, sorry, I can't hang out, I have counseling. I'd be like, oh, I have a doctor's appointment. And I was always so awkward to say doctor's appointment. And then like one day I just said like, I have therapy. And like, it's so freeing to say that, you know, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. But I love that you and other people who do have followings like are honest about it, because it, you know, when we talk about it, it gives people permission, like, oh, then nothing is wrong with me for going or for needing support. So first of all, thank you for sharing. And second,
I am always happy to share about that.
Yes. So what have you done like to protect your mental health this year? I mean, we've talked, you know, a little bit about limiting exposure, but what else?
I feel like what I've done to protect my mental health is prioritize it mainly. And,
Mhm.
going back to counseling, I had not been to counseling for a few years. I tend to go kind of in and out. I've never been someone that goes consistently. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just more I go when I'm really feeling like I've lost my way. And
Mhm.
then once I start to feel like, okay, I'm in an okay place, then I'll sort of dial it back or whatever. It just
Yeah.
really depends. But this year I was like, I need to go every Friday, and that's just where I'm at. And I'm not right now, but I was for just like a few months. But I think it's so important to know that we can't always self-help our way out of our issues. And so I
Yeah.
think the more that people talk about it, I can't tell you how many people have messaged me and said, well, I just don't even know how to find one because they're too afraid to ask. And I'm like, I guarantee you know someone who knows someone that knows someone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of stigma too. I know, like with my grandparents, they were like, "Oh, you're going to a psychiatrist?" And
Mhm.
I was like, "Not a psychiatrist, actually," but it's like they go to this like far. And there's nothing wrong with taking medicine if you need to. But it was just funny that there is a stigma for sure.
Yeah, there seriously is. It's very, I don't even know. I'm grateful that it's being like more and more talked about because it
Yes.
is for sure making a difference, and even when I started sharing about mental health, I think the most popular question I get is what you said, like, how do I find one? How did you find one?
Yes.
And like, isn't to me, that's an error in the system because like we don't not go to dentists because we don't know how to find a dentist.
I
We
agree
just
with
like
you.
write like friends, who's your favorite dentist?
I mean, it's that simple.
Mhm.
Every single counselor that I've found has been a recommendation from a friend, and I'm so grateful.
Yes. Like for me, so many of the people I admire, I'll be like, oh, I admire this person so much, whether it's real life, online, whatever. And then they'll somehow come out and be like, oh, I go to therapy. I'm like,
See?
so it's
That's why
not
they're
me.
probably semi-normal because
Yes.
you need the therapy.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I'm a huge fan.
yeah, me too. So it might feel like just with the shutdowns and everything, going to therapy might feel like off the table or impossible for people. But like a lot of therapists are either seeing people or doing like telehealth. Can you kind of talk about like the importance of getting help, even when it feels like impossible or inconvenient?
Oh yeah, I did all of mine on Zoom, so I didn't go into her office or anything like that. I mean, it's honestly never been easier to get therapy because most therapists, I think, are doing it via Zoom or telehealth or whatever. So as nice as it would be to get out and have an adult conversation somewhere outside my house, there's almost like a stripping down of vulnerability when you're over a screen, I think sometimes. So in some ways I felt less emotional, like sharing some of the things with her that I normally would be sort of subconscious about if it was like in person.
Yeah.
So it may be a great way to like try it out now and
Yeah. No, that's a
in
really
a
good
safe
point.
space. Yeah, being in your own home where you already feel comfortable. I
Yeah,
think
that's a great
great.
point. And if you live somewhere, like I live somewhere where I have to drive an hour to see my
Wow.
therapist. And so I think just back to the beginning, like the blessing and curse type thing of 2020, it was like probably with Acre, I wouldn't be able to be driving an hour there, an hour back to go to therapy. But
That would be so
because
hard.
of telehealth, you can. So if you live in an area where there's not a lot of options, you can see someone hours away in another state even
I mean,
because of
it's
this.
really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. People have gotten so creative. I mean, it's almost like there's no bounds to who you can talk to or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like people really fight sometimes like valuing the investment of therapy and working on
hmm
ourselves. Why do you think like we fight self-care and like true mental health self-care?
Well, I don't think therapy's fun. I mean,
Mhm.
it's hard and it's work. And it's like, you have to sort through some stuff that's like, you'd rather just forget about it. But what's on the other side of that is freedom, right? And that's what we all really want. And I think it's the best use of your money, honestly, to
Yeah.
get to that place. But it is expensive, it's a hard part of it that it is, but I know that there's ways that you can get financial aid to get therapy,
Mhm.
but definitely worth it.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think I just want to share this in case someone listening doesn't know. Like, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that if you do have health insurance, which I know is a privilege in our country, but a lot of insurances will cover therapy, which I didn't
Yeah.
realize at first. And I think a lot of people don't realize. So you can always look that up if that's an option. But yeah, it's so, or a lot of
Huge.
therapists will work with you too on.
There's for sure options. And I would say too, just for something free, I have found so many great therapists on Instagram. That share daily. And I'm like,
Yes.
wow, that was like something I've been looking for 40 years that someone just posted in a little square, so
Yes.
definitely look at therapists on Instagram, because they are sharing free information every day. That's so valuable.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah. That's so true. And probably even podcasts. I'm sure
Oh,
there's,
podcasts.
you
I'm sure
know,
there are free options.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's a mama listening to this that's struggling with her mental health, but she's in quarantine and, 2020 with kids at home, what would you tell her?
To get offline, that would be my number one thing,
Mm,
and to call a friend. I think one of the things that I've done during quarantine that has been absolutely the best thing in the world for me mentally has been to go on a weekly walk with a friend. Just
mm,
like an hour and a half of just like letting it all out. And like just having someone that can listen to you, and you're getting exercise. So that would be my second point, is endorphins are the cheapest form
yes.
of mental health. And so even if that's just walking up and down your stairs or whatever, there's so many free, YouTube videos or whatever, but moving your body, talking to a friend, and staying offline. I think, especially for moms that are struggling to get on Instagram and see someone's perfect house or perfect family or perfect whatever else that all of us know is not real. Hello. I'm not saying their family's not perfect. I'm sure they are, but it's a it's an unrealistic expectation to put on yourself, to think that you have to have it all together, especially with little kids. That's another level. When you're in the weeds in the young years, like, you have to be so gentle with yourself. So however you can protect your mind, to do it, and do it with like so much power, like, I am not subjecting myself to this today, or whatever it is that's making you feel bad,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think community, exercise, doing counseling,
Yeah.
and protecting your mind.
It's all so good. I love all of those. Okay, so kind of to wrap all of these topics together, we touched on balance here and there, but tell me, does it exist?
I wish. No, it doesn't exist at all. And I think we have seasons. I like the idea of seasons so much more than balance, because every season of your life is so different. And it's the same with like our actual seasons outside. We were
Yeah.
not meant to go, go, go all the time. And so winter is such a beautiful time to hibernate, to, and, go and bring out your inner introvert. Maybe you take up knitting, but you're getting still and you're reflecting. And then as the weather warms up, you're getting back more into socializing and things like that. But I think our bodies, one of my favorite books on this is Rhythms of Renewal. It's by Rebecca
Mm,
Lyons. This book is amazing. It's all about creating rhythms, which I think rhythms make so much more sense than balance, because
yes.
again, we're not going to be doing the same thing in the same way all the time. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend that book. I feel like it was like a total game changer, and it's a great like January, February read. So
Yes. Okay, that's so good. I've actually heard of that book. So I love that. And tell me about The 3 things.
Okay. So 3 things. This is just like my low bar lifestyle of if I get 3 things done each day, I am so proud of myself, you know? And so I use the passion planner. I know there's like a million different planners out there, but I like the way it just gives you like your priorities. And so I'll just do, these 3 things have to happen for my business every day to keep them functioning and afloat. And if I check all those out off, I'm good to go. I used to create these crazy goals for myself and unrealistic expectations and these crazy routines where everything had to be perfect. And, I could do it for like 3 days and then I'd fail and then I'd do not, and it was just like this vicious cycle. So for me, it's like 3 things a day, done.
I love that. And
Easy.
I've heard you talk about it before, and like it stuck with me. And I remember this summer, with my newborn, I was like so
Oh,
overwhelmed because it's like I haven't loaded the dishwasher, but I have one hand. And I remembered
it's so
your
crazy.
I remembered your 3 things. Like you did a video somewhere that I heard it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just write down like dishwasher. And if I do that
Literally.
today, I will celebrate. And yeah,
Yep.
it's so much easier to just pick 3 things, whether it's work or house stuff, because then, yeah, you don't feel like, well, I got 2 things, but not the 46 other, like very
So
unrealistic
crazy. Yes.
expectations.
And you get a dopamine hit from checking that box. You're like, I'm done. And my grandmother was always says this, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard. And it's the same
Yes.
principle. It's like just bite-sized things each day. Otherwise,
Yes.
we're miserable all the time because we just feel like
Mhm.
we're constantly failing.
Agreed. Okay, we're going to do rapid fire questions to wrap
Ooh,
up.
okay,
And
I'm
I
ready.
totally already asked you this, but I didn't ask you the second part. So, your Enneagram number, you said you're a 3 wing 4. Tell
Yeah.
me the part of a 3 that is like so spot on for you, like the stereotypical 3 thing that's so spot on for you.
I mean, all of it. But I think the people pleasing portion where I can put on what I need to put on for different groups of people can definitely rear its head instead of staying true to myself. But my 4 wing goes, don't do that. That's not who we are. And so
Yeah.
then I'll bring it back in and be real. But yeah, it's a struggle. I mean, I think it's just always wanting to be enough that's
Yes.
exhausting as a 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, what's the best and worst piece of parenting advice you've ever received?
Okay. So best, I think just prioritizing bedtime. I think that it's the hardest part of the day. I mean, I'm exhausted. I
Mhm,
would love to just like throw my kids in bed and have a glass
mhm,
of wine. You know what I mean?
mhm. Yep.
But I have found that this is when they really share what's on their hearts. It's the most sacred time in the day where I just feel like it's just an amazing time to connect with them. So it's like hard, right?
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
so worth it. And
Yes.
I'm just always like, at the end, it's just like so sweet. Worst parenting advice, I think worst would be that kids need tough love. I honestly,
Mhm.
I don't think the ruling with an iron fist has ever been effective.
No.
And I think the more that I treat them like humans that have feelings and I think that that has always served me better than screaming and yelling and being strict.
Yeah.
So just really caring about them as people and listening to them, I think, instead of the
Good.
tough love.
Mhm. So good. Okay, what's your guilty pleasure late night snack food? I know you don't stay up too late, but
I sure don't. And I was like, snack food, wine, yeah. Um, that's probably it, to be totally honest. I'm actually not a late night snacker, but I am a late night whiner. And by late
Mm.
night, I mean 8 o'clock.
I mean, 4 p.m.
4 p.m. or that.
Okay, what's your go-to essential oil diffuser blend?
Okay, so I am really basic when it comes to essential oil blends
That's
because I
good.
just use whatever I have. And today I was like, I'm on a big gratitude kick. So right
Mm,
now I'm either diffusing gratitude, which I'm obsessed with, if you use Young Living or Christmas Spirit, because obviously.
yes. I love
Yeah.
those. Okay.
And I use it year round.
Oh, I know, me too.
I love
like
it.
August creeps around and I'm like, Christmas spirit.
Love
It's
it.
the best.
Love it
It's
so
the
much.
best. The orange like helps me be defensive to use it year round. I'm like, there's orange in it.
Oh yeah.
So you can use it in the
Orange is so
summer,
happy.
right?
Totally.
Okay, where
Love
can
that.
people find you and follow along?
So I blog at leslewgraham.com, Lesley with an EY, which is not typical. And then I'm on Instagram with the same name. So I have the same handle anywhere. So wherever you are, I will be there, Lesley W Graham.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And
Thank you.
I just hope the moms listening feel like empowered with whatever schooling decision or daycare or whatever it is, like that they just feel like, okay, I did the right thing. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
I hope
I
that
think that any mom that's doing anything is winning because we all
for
have to
sure.
just do what works for us, and it's always different, and mine changes constantly. So,
Yes. Amen. Okay.
aw,
Thank you so much.
love chatting with you. Thank
You
you.
too.